Talk a little bit about the Angel Forum. I know you're bringing it to New York soon,
Mm-hmm.
so interesting to hear.
Yeah, so the Open Angel Forum, so there's a meme that started a few months ago. I'd actually posted something a little before Jason, but Jason Calacanis has a much bigger megaphone than I do. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of folks that basically make money brokering introductions between startups and angel investors, which isn't necessarily, I think, a bad thing. I just don't think it needs to exist. I think this is something that the community should be able to get together and do, on its own without necessarily charging the entrepreneur, who, by the way, has the shallowest pocket out of the whole bunch.
Yep.
And so I think we realized that, and at the same time, these weren't necessarily the folks who had the best connections to angels or financing too. I don't necessarily get my best deals by going to a conference where somebody paid $1,000 to go. In fact, I don't necessarily want to fund an entrepreneur who decided it was a good use of their own personal capital to spend $1,000 to get to me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty accessible.
Yeah.
And I think most investors generally are. We may have overstuffed inboxes that may take a couple times to get through, but we're paid to find good deals, and we have to look at a lot of deals. So, the Open Angel Forum basically, it's set up as a dinner, really sort of relaxed, sort of intimate setting, smaller. We'll take, 6 or 7 companies and introduce them to about a dozen angels. We'll have some sponsors there, who basically, pay for the whole thing. But a much better way, I think, to interact in a small setting basis. And this is something we hope to do, a couple of times a year. I think the day is April 8th.
Yep.
I should know that off the top of my head, we just moved it. But we'll take applications up until about, I think, a week or two beforehand. So I think it's definitely, worth applying if you're going through angel financing. And so far it's been a success. I mean, they've done it in LA and Boulder, and companies have definitely gotten finance from it.
And the model is, so you have sponsors to help pay for the event, but also the angel investors, in theory, pay as well to come?
No, it's
a sponsor.
Yeah. So there's announced, whether it's a lawyer or a recruiter or somebody, along those lines. But no, the angels and investors don't get charged either. Yeah. So the both sides that need and want to connect as seamlessly as possible, there's no barriers to them necessarily participating.
So you posted like a week ago on your blog. Any takers yet?
A bunch. Yeah. No, I very quickly looked at the spreadsheet and was like very overwhelmed. So I know I don't have to think about it until we sort of make the decisions later on. But there's a lot of interested folks.
How do you pick?
It's tough. I think one thing we definitely are counting on is a little bit of diversity.
Yeah.
So there's a couple folks that I talked to that I thought had interesting models that would make for a nice mix. We didn't want necessarily 6 or 7 people doing the same type of thing. I think different judges may have their criteria, but I would love to see somebody who had a really great idea, might not otherwise be as tapped in as some other folks to this community. Probably maybe less likely to pick somebody who would have gotten to these people otherwise, because we really do want to broaden the pool of access.
And can you say who the angels are, or
we're still trying to figure that out, actually. There's a whole bunch of people, and in fact, I think one of the big questions is who's an angel.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you look at somebody like Roger Ehrenberg, who has a fund now, and will still make angel-sized investments. There's a number of VCs who want to come, who want to make angel-sized investments, and it's kind of a tough call. I think a piece of feedback that I've had debate with a lot of folks about this is you should try and get people whose main job and main routine it is to make these kinds of investments. Where you're finding somebody who does this by exception, I think it's going to be tougher to get that kind of time. They're not as used to dealing with companies at this sort of stage. So we're looking for people who are active, can write checks. And that's the worst part of some of these forums where you pay money half the people I know haven't written a check in 2 years,
Yeah.
and the entrepreneur sort of feels like it's a waste. So there are a bunch of active people in New York that will get invites, and it'll all be a matter of sort of scheduling and stuff.
Yeah. If you were to give some advice, so it sounds like we both agree New York's a great place to start a company. Plenty of money here, plenty of customers here. You don't need to be on the left coast. You don't need to have a Stanford MBA or degree. Anything else you would suggest to someone thinking about starting a company?
I think really one important thing to keep in mind is I think VCs and angels are seen as people who take risk. And actually, I think if you really want to get investment, taking as much risk off the table and to think about, I mean, there's a couple of things I think, we look at. We look at team, look at product, and, you look at market. And product, you're never going to have all three of those things. Like, if you have the most experienced team ever, a product that's already in the market and getting traction, and a huge market, well, that's a going concern. That's a late stage investment. On an early stage for a seed, you might have an unproven team with an interesting product in a big market.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to pick and choose, which missing piece are you basically going to have your bet on. The more of those pieces that are question marks, the tougher it is to kind of get there. So if you know that you're missing key members of your team and you don't have the right product, but it's a big market, what can you do to take some of those pieces of risk off the table? Can you bootstrap your way to an interesting product? Can you validate the market with a customer, or, a couple of customers who are willing to buy it or even invest in the product? Trying to take as much risk off the table as possible, I think, is a key piece of advice.